Welcome back to FordeeTV. I'm your host, Fordee. Today we're doing a tutorial on how to resin artwork. I get this question asked all the time, so why don't I show you guys, right? I have a piece of artwork here. This is actually on a wood panel, right? And on the back, what I've done is I've taped all of the edges, and then I taped these on so I raised it up. You don't need to use these little plastic pieces, but you should raise it off the ground as the resin is going to drip from the artwork, right? So when I turn this over, and one of the reasons you want to tape the edges is because if you don't, when this drips, it will form drips here that are really tough to cut off. But if you tape it, you pull the tape, you'll pull the resin off too. So here we have this piece of artwork. I know that 60 by 60 centimeters is roughly 550 grams of resin, right? So the things that you're going to need is you're going to need some type of cup to mix the resin. A lot of people pour equal parts because it's a two-part system into two different cups and then combine it. Well, I think that's silly. Get yourself a small scale, put this on the scale, tear it, and then once you tear the scale, meaning set it to 0 with this on there, then you can measure by pouring into here and looking at how much it weighs, right? If you're slightly a little over the 550, again, depending on the size of the piece, there's a place you can go to calculate what size you need on the web. I'll leave it in the description, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press on the scale, right? Instead of going into the other pieces, I'll tell you as we go, right? So next, I'm going to put this on the scale. Then I'm going to press tear, or terra in Spanish, and it will set it to 0. Now, you're going to take equal parts resin and hardener and pour this in here, right? So like I said, 550 for this piece, so that's roughly 275 grams of each. So right now, we are at 270, there we go, 276, slightly over. That's okay, and we should pour an equal part of the hardener, right? So, I have these paper towels here because after I clean the stuff, I'll tell you about this in a second, I wrap them in paper towels to keep the moisture away. Anyway, so now we need to go to 550, and this is a new thing of hardener. You usually go through one of these more than you go through the other, because you end up pouring, overcompensating. So we want to go to 554. Whoops. See, this is how you end up using more than one or the other. And, whoops, no, that's 460. My bad. So 5. Oops, there we go. Overpoured it. So put about 10 more grams than I should have of the hardener, but that's okay. I mean, as long as it's really close. If it was dramatically different, then I would pour more of the resin, etc. Now that we have this, we can take this puppy off, get rid of the scale, turn it off. Sweet. Now we need to mix this. I use this little wooden spoon. I don't even know what it's used for. I bought it from one of the bazaars around here, along with this mixing cup. But I clean my stuff afterward, and that way I can reuse it. So the key is I need to mix this for 3 minutes. Instead of you watching me mix this for 3 minutes, I will just come back when this is done. All right, so I've been stirring this for roughly 3 minutes, maybe a little bit over. But you want to make sure you stir this for about 3 minutes, scrape the sides, etc., right? Got a paper towel here, so after I pour, I can put this on there just so no drips get anywhere. If you see on my floor, I have a blue tarp, and I'm using this blue tarp to protect the floor. Make sure that whatever you put underneath your surface, because the resin is going to drip, is protecting your floor or your table or whatever. Another important thing to note is this should be relatively level. If your floor is not level, you need to figure that out because this is self-leveling. If I had this at a slant, the resin is all going to drip off because it takes some time to cure. Roughly 45 minutes. Once you mix this, depending on the heat or the temperature and the humidity in your place, you have roughly 45 minutes. Let's just say 40, right? Just because it's FordeeTV. Anyway, the next thing that you're gonna want to use are some gloves. You don't want to get this resin on your hands. It is a pain in the ass, right? It's not good for your skin. It's not good for you. So wear some gloves. And if you have disposable gloves, sometimes I go through more than one pair for a pour. So what's going on? Once you got your gloves on, you have this stirred up for at least 3+ minutes or so. Now we can pour. Now there's a couple things to point out. This is a piece of wood, right? You can do this on canvas as well, but on wood, wood is slightly porous, so one of the things you might want to do is varnish it first. I find that varnishing it first will give it a little bit of, or it will lose its porousness, and then this will come out cleaner. Another important thing to note is this is textured, well, this particular piece is textured because I used acrylic medium to make these leaves. So there's parts that are raised up. This is also broken pieces of black glass inside of the gun. So keep in mind about that, right? Next, when I pour this, I'm gonna get on my knees for this. When I pour this, I'm not just gonna pour in the center. What I do is pour like a little zigzag. I don't go all the way to the edges because that's what the spreader's for, right? And then when I get to the end, get the rest of it right here. Now, you're gonna wanna scrape whatever your mixing container is for the extra resin in here. Number one, it matters how much resin is down because that calculator is gonna give you a fairly exact amount, right? Now I do slightly over what it says, probably because I'm worried that I get all of it out here and I don't mind if it drips a little bit. You don't want to be too much more because for sure, if you create a coat that's larger than 1/8 of an inch, then it just won't stay. It will self-level and all drip off. So you'll be wasting. This stuff is not cheap, right? So once I have this stuff relatively out of the container, I'll put this aside on top of the napkin. Now I have this. This is actually used for acrylic painting techniques. It's a small plastic wedge that has teeth. You could use one that doesn't have teeth. The reason I like this is because it will spread the resin while leaving some behind, right? And then what I do is I go around the piece and try to bring it to the edges. Close, not all the way. This is not a rush, right? Get this puppy stirred up a little bit. You'll notice in the resin that it is quite, there are air bubbles, and those air bubbles came from us stirring when we were storing it. So, now you notice right here, or maybe you won't notice, but right there, I got really close to the edge and now it's already dripping off. And I'm trying not to go all the way to the edge. You notice I just kind of wipe to the edge. That's because I want it to level itself, right? If you bring it to the side and then force it to start already dripping, then you're going to waste a lot of the resin. And I have a feeling this piece may be difficult to be clean, right? And what I mean by clean is that it may have little bumps and divots in it once the resin cures because this puppy has so much texture to it. So maybe I'll need to pour another layer of resin, although I usually don't do that. You can pour another layer if you wait 3-4 hours. When it becomes kind of like a jelly. Ooh, scheiße. Now, once I touch this with my glove, and I touched it because it was dripping a lot, then I try to get the sides, right? Because I'm not so worried that it's perfect on the sides, but I guess I screwed up a little bit because I try to have this done on top before I move to trying to do the sides. But, okay. So, it can't go perfect. We're recording. Yesterday's pour on a piece was perfect. It was flawless. But I didn't record that, so I mean, it was to be expected that this wasn't going to be flawless. And I have to remember that it's on my hand because as I move. All right, so I'm trying to look, and I may need to get another, once I torch it, I need to go get another light to kind of like examine where did I miss or where did it not go to what corner. Now when I'm done with this, if I think I have everything, then what I'm going to do is put this inside the little bucket, if you will, and then I'm going to look for places where it kind of dripped off already, or I'm going to just tap with my fingers in the center where there's the most resin should be, and I'm just going to wipe my fingers on the side. Now, you can obviously do this better or worse. I'm not so worried that it's a very thick layer of resin on the sides. I'm just trying to make sure that there is some, right? So, yeah, and I see right here, and I'll drag my fingers around to move the resin around on top. I'm also trying, whoops, I'm trying not to step in the resin. I'll tell you, resin gives such a really cool glass-like tabletop finish when it's done. It makes the pieces more contrasty, makes the colors pop more. But the problem is, it's such a pain in the ass to work with. And then on top of it, you don't want to get it on your hands, your skin. Cleanup is a pain in the ass, especially if you're going to reuse stuff, right? So it would be super waste to not reuse your mixing pot or container, and then also your stir. I guess you could one-time use it. It would increase the cost dramatically of how much it costs to do this per piece, but it would take the nightmare away of the cleanup. The cleanup is such a pain. I would probably resin way more pieces if the cleanup was not such a pain. So, almost done with the sides. All right. Now I'm going to take these gloves off, throw them away real quick. All right, before I torch it, I have this light right here, and this light is going to help me see things I cannot see without it. This is a light I use for, it's a small on-camera light. Anyways, we'll save that again for a second. Next, I have a torch here. Make sure you're quite ventilated if you're doing this. If your place is not ventilated, you're going to be smelling some stuff you should not be smelling. So, what I'm doing over here, don't leave the torch in one place for too long. If you do, this will cause problems. But what I'm trying to do here is pop the bubbles that's in the resin. And the heat itself is going to make that happen. Now, you want to move it fast enough, and you can go over it several times, that it doesn't stay in one spot and burn, right? Because if that's the case, you're really going to get some toxic fumes. Plus, it may screw up the drying time. We've got the ambulance outside cheering us on. So, sometimes I wear a paint protector or respirator, but I'm not doing that right now because I need to talk for the video. One time I was doing this torch slipped out of my hand, and I was on the ground so I could be close to it, and I used my hand to swipe to stop the torch from falling and hitting the artwork, and I saved the artwork. It didn't fall and hit it, but the torch then flew over and hit me right in the throat while the torch was still hot. I had a burn mark for like 2 weeks. Who says artwork is not dangerous? All right, so by using the torch, we've also sped up the drying a little bit, or at least the part where it gets gel-like. So now what I'm trying to do is look to see if there are issues or imperfections. I see where parts of the textured artwork are sticking up, but it looks pretty good. I can see it dripping in certain spots already, which is fine. That's to be expected. If you want it to be really anal, you could use like a popsicle stick, or you could use paper towel or something, and you could wipe the bottom and like babysit it for a while to try to eliminate drips. But in reality, that doesn't work so well. you're gonna pretty much have drips no matter what. So it is what it is. One of the cool things are these torches are refillable, so you can just add some more gas. Anyway, some other important things to note. Now I need to go wash this stuff, but before I check out, in order to wash this, what you should do is use alcohol, like rubbing alcohol. If you get rubbing alcohol and you mix it with the resin, it will dilute the resin. Now you want to do that first with the rubbing alcohol, use your hands, etc. Wipe it. After you've done that, then dry it off with a paper towel, then use soap and water. After you do that, you may do that once or twice, then dry it, and it should be good to be used again. What else? Other than that, you need to wait roughly 24 hours. So right now, it's I think noon, give it roughly, in the day. So tomorrow, when I wake up, even though maybe at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning should be fine, but you want to wait at least 16 plus hours. Then the resin is relatively hard. What I can do is then flip it over. It won't be dripping anymore. In fact, it won't be dripping after another couple hours. It will turn into like a gel-like substance that you really can't mess with it after about 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes, etc. But tomorrow what I'll do is I'll flip it over and I'll take all of the plastic pieces off. I'll pull the tape off, which will pull off the drips that will be stuck on the bottom. Then I'll have a clean backside of the piece, and I don't know if I should do a part 2 or I should wait to release this video tomorrow. Let's see. I'll decide after I clean it. All right, guys, I hope you found this tutorial informative, helpful, if you decide to give resining a go with your artwork. Yeah, it is a pain in the ass and you have to get used to certain things, but once you do, you should get some really clean quality results, right? This piece was resined yesterday, and I have to say, obviously you see glare in the yeah, I see it in the video looking at the monitor, but this is quite flawless. There's no divots. I'm trying to turn it different ways so you can see there's no divots, no issues. This is a fairly clean piece as far as resin is concerned. Sometimes though, it cannot be prevented, and that is irritating. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Until next time, I'm out.